you didn't get a button, Jim has Bureau for Open Culture buttons.
I'm out.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Is it very
Pardon me. It was a popular item. I was going to say swag makes up for the delay, but not this time. We're going to do a sound check, and then I think
we're going to work on some sound. We might get to something that doesn't have sound, but maybe I can play it loud enough from the speaker and you can hear it, but I'm not sure. But we'll start anyways.
Okay.
So, yeah. Well, I want to thank Adele, Loretta, and C3 for inviting me down. I really appreciate it. It's always great to know that someone is interested in what you're doing and, and finds some sort of engagement with it. So I really appreciate Adele for inviting me to come down. Yeah, Bureau for Open Culture, actually just to briefly begin, I was asked to take a position as Director of Exhibitions at Columbus College of Art and Design about 3 or 4 years ago, and to kind of reshape their exhibition program for them after having been at the Wattis Institute. And Bureau of Open Culture sort of started because as a way to define what I was doing for CCAD, because I was utilizing a gallery that was also used for lots of different other contexts, meaning like the admissions department used it to show like high school exhibition work by high school students, and other kinds of exhibitions that took place in there. And it was the first time too you really realized like, wow, like how much space defines like a program. Like any sort of space you think of, a gallery or an exhibition program is often defined by that space that you visit to see the work. So what I wanted to do was sort of like a way of like, how do we define what the work I was doing, which was interested in showing work by international artists alongside a lot of the works by artists in Columbus, as well as like, how do you like, we were doing a lot of projects that were taking place outside of the gallery context. Lots of collaborations with libraries, lots of collaborations with garden projects, and the city spaces and so forth. So Bureau for Open Culture just started as a means to like define this activity. And I mean, I think the best way for me to, well, first of all, Bureau, the name comes from like Bureau, sort of this administrivia, this allegiance to like this curatorial work to like, like organize and keep things together. And then paired, of course, with open culture, I think really helps define like what is really contemporary art in lots of ways, in this way of like embracing lots of different working methods, embracing lots of different disciplines, including architecture and science, all within this larger realm of art. And in that way, it seems like you have this framework of an exhibition making system with Bureau that really, though, engenders a space of experimentation and allows things to happen by pairing two together. So what I thought we'd do tonight, though, is just like start off, like I have been influenced, and I really value a number of artworks by collectives and artists from the United States and elsewhere. And I thought I'd just go through briefly, even just to talk about a few of these artists, because all of them have influenced the activity that Bureau for Open Culture does and what I value in contemporary art, I guess you'd say. And the first one is a collective that's called Wolkenklauser, which they're based in Vienna, and it's like Wolkenklauser means like kind of roughly like weeks of closure. And this project is a project that took place in 1994. Wolkenklauser was invited by this institution in Zurich called Stadthalle, and they were invited. Wolkenklauser was invited to Zurich because there was a situation where like housing for prostitutes had been completely abolished by a recent changes in city funding. And so this organization called Stadthalle, S-H-E-D-H-A-L-L-E, invited Wolkenklauser to come in and spend about 8 weeks in residence in Zurich, and to look at how they could sort of address this problem with prostitutes that had, of course, a place to stay in the evening, but during the day they had no place to rest. They had no safe place to sleep. And what Voorhies did was, after being in Zurich, talking to a number of people, and the curators at Shed Hall kind of like stitching them into the community, they decided to hold a series of conversations in a boat on Lake Zurich. And the conversations were private, and they were specifically set up to pair like the mayor with like human rights activists, to pair like sources of funding with like other issues related to social work. And over a period of these private conversations in a private space, where the politicians and the social workers, as well as representatives maybe from of the prostitutes, Voorhies was able to secure enough funding to purchase or to rent another building and provide space for the prostitutes to live, to sleep during the day. And from 1994 until 2001, their work actually created a safe haven for prostitutes to be until another wave of changes and economic shifts took place, and that did away with the funding and did away with the work that Voorhies had done. Another work is by this collective called Tesser Quinto, and they're a collective of 3 young artists that are based in Mexico City. And this is a work that took place in an area called Monterey, and it's actually on the outskirts of Monterey. And Monterey, this small town on the outskirts of Monterey, doesn't really have any zoning. It actually also doesn't really even have any kind of city center, any kind of central place for people to gather, any kind of place that kind of marks that space of community, a public space where people can utilize it however they see fit. And so Tesser Quinto, saw this as sort of like a problem in a way, of like how does community build if there isn't that space for them to congregate and exchange, whether even through markets or political ideas. So what they did, I think this work was maybe done in like early 2000s, is they simply built this, it's like a 20 by 30 foot slab of concrete, and they inserted this sculpture that marked a space that people could gather. And it's a really simple gesture, but over the period of its life, which is still, at least from a couple of years ago, was when I talked to them a year and a half ago, the concrete platform is still there, but the concrete platform has actually been used by different people to create markets and temporary markets to sell all sorts of goods, and also as vegetable markets and so forth. It's also been a space for defining the center for celebrations throughout the city, as well as throughout the town, as well as really to the country. And it's also been a space where politicians have used to communicate about their political views, as well as create conversations about politics in the region. And I really value this work. I appreciate this work as the simplicity in it, but also the complexity at the same time, and the sort of different strains that it can achieve in terms of building community. And this is another work. This is a work by a collective also called Learning Site. Learning Site at this time was a collective that was made up of a number of different members, one based in Chicago, one based in Mexico City, another in Malmo, and another in Copenhagen. And this project also took place outside of Monterey, Mexico. And in this area, there's a sort of this situation with real estate that if you squat on it and you build something, it actually becomes yours over a certain period of time. But what's happened here is that large swaths of land are are taken up by large real estate developers that build homes quickly and therefore establish their presence on there without purchasing the property, and then they turn it into a system where they sell the property and the homes that are on it. And by homes, I mean they're like very simple dwellings, a little bit like what you see in the lower right-hand corner. So what LearningSite decided to do is like this project works on a number of different levels that I appreciate. And one is that it thinks about how to utilize recycled materials. These PET bottles are not recyclable in Mexico, so there is just a number of them that are everywhere. And so LearningSite organized a system of collecting the bottles with the community, and then they organized a system of putting together the bottles with the community, and then as well as like using them to build the structure. And so they worked with people of different interests and different skills to build a number of these dwellings out of recycled materials, and then they used concrete to kind of cover them up to make them look like other dwellings that were being built by these larger developers. And so it's a way of sort of recapturing that condition of ownership of property, and as well as, I think, what I really like and what I think Bureau for Culture tends to do is uniting people with different skills and different backgrounds to come together and create something in a shared sort of experience toward a certain goal. And yeah, that's what this work is here. I don't know if any of you have heard of this. This is the work called the Invisible Five. It is based on the route, the I-5 that takes people from between San Francisco and Los Angeles. And this is done by a group of artists. One of them is named Amy Balkan, as well as this design activist group called Pond, based out of San Francisco. And what they did was create an audio tour of basically the overlooked infrastructure along I-5. And so the work is downloadable online. And so if you're hopping in the car to drive from San Francisco to Los Angeles, you can download the audio, press play, and it's coordinated so that as you go up or down, you can listen to a number of different built structures along I-5 that you may otherwise just completely drive by and notice but not have any idea what it is. And if anyone's driven this road, they certainly notice the California aqueduct. And on the recording, there's a history that's given of like how the aqueduct was built. And I don't know if we have sound or not. I would love to play part of it because it's sort of maybe in fact you can hear it if I turn up this loud enough.
Yeah. Well, I was laying it back in when I was on the water project authority, and Bob Evans stood up against the wall and said, if you want to leave your mark in history, he says, you build that California water project.
This is the governor of Brown speaking.
The California water project. We're talking about the Feather River Dam. We're talking about the San Luis Reservoir. We're talking about pumping the water over the Tehachapi. That was all in Bob Edmonds' water plan.
Here's the Central Valley Project today. Over 20 dams and reservoirs to store 14 million acre-feet of water. 4.6 trillion gallons for farm, home, and industry.
Driving north on the I-5 through Kern County, you pass through a series of hidden kingdoms. Kingdoms that you've never heard of. They have no exit sign to tell you where to get off. You don't notice any change in the terrain. But you pass through a series of water districts and water agencies that were created over 100 years
legislature would give the money to build a road. So he built the road, starting at one end, built it here, stopped there, and then started from the other end, and left a big gap. And then the legislature had to change it. So people told me about that. I said, why don't you do that? Build here, and then they have to complete it. But Norrie convinced me that we were going to pass a bond issue at all. We were going to satisfy it. We had to take care of every part of the state. And the $1,750,000,000 plus Thailand oil revenues, which we, I can remember arguing, we'll take one great natural resource, oil, and we'll create another great natural resource, water, which was a good argument. But I remember I was absolutely determined that I was going to pass this down on the water bill. I wanted this to be a monument to me. So, I mean, it was good for the state, but I felt political standpoint.
That's where I'll stop it now. It goes on. The point of it is, so, you know, this take from an oral history project, Governor Brown speaking about his experience in the 60s when the California aqueduct was being conceived and pushed through the legislature. But the point of it, partially, and what the recording goes on to say, is that, and you alluded to, is that, I mean, the water is actually sort of funneled to property owners. And so, again, like, property owners are controlling the use of water, but then also this entire structure was built based largely on an ego of one or two individuals. And so I really like the Invisible 5 project for a number of reasons, partly because you can download the information online, so it really reconfigures this aspect of the exhibition and of a work, if you will, and as well as like, so, and you can listen to all of this online. I like the way that it provides knowledge and educates us as we pass through space. So it can operate in real time by starting it at a certain position, on I-5 as you travel through space, as well as like it draws out that unknown about so much architecture and public space that we walk through, and we have no idea the history of it. And these again, I'm showing you these partially as a way to sort of begin to introduce Bureau folk cultures and things that we work toward. This last project I'll talk about is just briefly, and we could watch the video of it, but it's a project by an artist named Zoe Strauss, and it is a project where I think it had occurred maybe 10 times over the course of one time each year for 10 years, and she placed photographs under a Philadelphia overpass to exhibit photographs that she had taken and photographs of the community around this overpass. And so, and then once, it was a day-long exhibition, once the day ended, people were allowed to pull down the photographs that they wanted and pay like a really nominal fee for the object. And this work I really appreciate because it rethinks how we engage with fine art, or what we learn to call fine art. It also helps to take the photograph back to a more of that object of handling and less of that rarefied or precious kind of object. I think it also reconfigures a space that is otherwise useless, like in terms of beneath an overpass. It recharges that space as a space for community also, because it's the photographs that she puts up are often of people in the area. It also probably unites two disparate spaces, because two disparate areas in the city, because as we know, like overpasses and freeways often divide urban space, so it brings those communities together in this kind of central path. So all of these works, you know, to try and begin, it's like, what is Bureau folk and culture? What do I value in terms of exhibitions, in terms of the kind of art that we present and how we present it? Like this sort of, I think a lot of these help to summarize it, and partially is like Wolkenklauser. Like one of the things that I really appreciate about Bureau folk and culture that I try to do is extend the idea of the exhibition to not only a public experience of art, but what about the private moments? And in doing so, like I really try to like stitch together visiting artists into the community so that an artist that we have visiting to produce a public work, the work is actually used as a vehicle in a way to, of course, fulfill that mandate that we curators, we artists, we exhibition makers present something to the public, but also to prioritize the private moments between artist and community and between artists and students of while the work is being made. And I think that often that is overlooked, and I think also sometimes depending upon the personality of the artist, it isn't something that's always welcomed, but I tend to engage with people who are gregarious, often artists that work in academic environments, so they're used to or welcoming of students, for instance. And so the entire space of exhibition making not only has the public facade, public front, which of course I value as well, but then you tease out the public moments. And I think Bokenklausel sort of speaks to that. It's okay to do things in private kind of thing and still be considered an exhibition. And of course, Discern Quinto, how do you create community through simple gestures? Learning site, how do you draw on different skills from different aspects of community to work toward a certain goal? Invisible 5, how do you like draw to the surface unknown knowledge and make it public and relevant to the public space through which you're moving? And then Zoe Strauss, like I just mentioned. So, I mean, those are a lot of the core ideas, I think, that inspire and push the work that I do with European culture forward. And I think the best way then too is also now I just want to like go through and talk about some of the recent projects we've done and to give you a sense of what I've been up to for the last couple of years or so. It's like we're super informal, so if anyone has any questions or I'm missing anything or whatever, just interrupt anytime.
Excuse me, Jim.
Oh, yeah.
Try this sound,
Yeah.
see if it's good enough. Let's try the first versus the longest.
This is the Center Revolution, the project I did in Columbus in 2009 and in the fall of 2009. And this exhibition invited 6 artist collectives to Columbus to make work in response to the city. And the gallery at Columbus College of Art and Design is something like 8,500 square feet. It's really intimidating, and it's also just sort of a problem because you have to present work in the gallery on a relatively pretty low budget. So what I wanted to do with the Center Revolution is we completely vacated that gallery and left it open as long as the building was open all day long, and people could actually ride their bike around in there if you wanted to. And the part of that gallery was an information center where people would find out information about the visiting artist with huge calendars, internet access, and like all the books and stuff of the visiting artist. And then we had little arrows and maps that would point people and actually would tell people to leave the gallery and go see what was happening in public space. Because the artist collectives that had come, and then we had a series of programming as well. I think we had 18 artists over the course of 2 months visiting, and we created 5 public works and had over 30-some events. And it was a really exciting time just in terms of artists constantly coming and going and engaging with the students at Columbus College of Art and Design, but also Adele with like the students at Ohio State University and creating this work and this really sense of like nice spirit. And this just shows you from where a lot of the people were traveling. And as part of that, as part of the Center Revolution, I'll talk about some of the works the artists made and who they were. But one of the other things I did was Columbus has a number of empty storefronts, and so I moved, since we moved out of the gallery, we needed a space to operate, and I found this, another actually big, unbearable space, and I called this project Office of Collective Play. It was this huge, barren space that we cleaned up, really just cleaned up, but then we occupied it. And this is where all of the events were held during the exhibition in the fall of the Center Revolution. So Office of Collective Play became the headquarters for Bureau of Urban Culture, but it also, since it was in walking distance from Columbus College of Art and Design, it became like this really real space of community where the students and the artists were gathering, and it was often open, like a lot, even though it should have been closed, locked more often than it was. I don't have to play anything yet, though. Should I go back and see?
Let's try.
Okay. Let's see if this works. Oops, no. It's okay.
It should be fine now.
Yeah. It's okay, I'll deal with it. So, but one of the things that I want to emphasize with the Office of Collective Play was that we were only located 5 blocks away from the college and away from the gallery, but creating this undefined space, although completely operated by institution, it allowed for students to connect with the artists as well as the public presentations of the artists that completely leveled the hierarchy often associated with an institution, with an auditorium, and even with the gallery. A lot of the professors that attended the events and the talks by artists that happened in the Office of Collective Play commented to me about how their students had a lot more to say in the conversations we had, and a lot more engagement with the artists, and even some of the students that were a little more shy, I feel like they were given this space, almost this space to operate in temporarily, that would not have been there had we been doing this inside the gallery or inside an auditorium. And it was a decrepit space with leaky ceilings. We had to rent a porta toilet to have out back. Like, something kept happening the whole time, and it was in a lot of ways it was constructed because like I was in control of it, I guess you could say. It was a framework, but it was a loose framework, and it was again this kind of uncertainty because you Office of Collective Play, you don't know what it is, that allowed for a lot of that to happen. And so also another thing that happened in the Office of Collective Play is I invited Claire Fontaine, a collective based in Paris, to participate in the exhibition and to reside in Columbus for a bit of time. And one of the things, Claire Fontaine, they're a collective of 2, they proposed that they would give a talk on Jean-Francois Lyotard's libidinal economy in relation to the autonomia movement and the feminist movement in Italy, and discuss their work. And I was like, oh no, this is like, who is going to know? I know very little of Lyotard's work, and how is this going to connect with the students and the people? So what I did, and what I think this again sort of speaks to Bureau of Urban Culture, the stitching in the knowledge as well as the artist, was over the course of 6 weeks prior to Claire Fontaine coming to Columbus, we held a reading group that together, a number of us, there's a few here, we had 15 or so people in all that would come through, and we read Lyotard's libidinal economy together. And it was the most haphazard but rewarding and strange experience because, first of all, reading group should be consistent. Like, you should be there every day. And if you show up on week 3, who are you? I don't know who you are, but we can do a catch up. So it became this kind of like strange but really warm learning site that we would talk about libidinal economy, and we would look at work by Claire Fontaine, and then we would get through whatever we could get through. And then plus you had a lot of people from different backgrounds and different educational backgrounds coming in. But the key thing that I learned from it was that every week emails would go out, Facebook posts would go out about Claire Fontaine, about the reading group. So it generated this interest and this repeated knowledge about that we were doing this reading group in preparation for their visit. And we had one of the best turnouts during their talk, as well as they told me it was one of the best conversations in terms of the kinds of questions that were asked, and the knowledge about their work, which a lot of people did not know about their work. And I would definitely do this model again in terms of engaging with the public in this kind of semi-private, semi-public way in preparation for an artist visit as a sort of form of educating them in advance, educating them. And this is another project that took place during the Center Revolution. This is a collective called Red 76. They're based now out of Minneapolis. They're based for about 10 years out of Portland, Oregon. It's spearheaded by an artist named Sam Gould. And Red 76 proposed to build a schoolhouse in the parking lot that fall. And so over the course of 4 or 5 weeks, members of Red 76, and Sam Gould was there for the entire time, recycled, found all sorts of discarded materials and platforms from dumpsters, and as well as Craigslist posts and so forth. And they took over the parking lot to near the college to make this schoolhouse. And the project operates on a number of levels. First of all, it's like Columbus, the artists visiting during the Center Revolution had a real problem with the number of cars in Columbus because there are so many parking lots. So particularly talk about Learning Site, they come from Copenhagen and Malmo, where we know they really prioritize the bicycle and alternative transportation. But Columbus has just a lot of surface parking. And so the artists that were visiting and observing the city gravitated to that. And Red 76, while they're from Portland, they still also wanted to sort of aggravate this public space that people needed to park their cars. And so we started in a corner in one of the parking lots, and before I know it, it was really in a large part of the parking lot, and not allowing less and less people to park over the number of weeks. But the project also was, we connected Sam and other members of Red 76 with specific seminars at Columbus College of Art and Design, so that the classes would take place outside. They would look at how do we connect our skills that each of us have, how do we connect our desire. Some students do not want to yield a hammer or a saw, so those students might then be the ones that go out looking for the materials. And it was remarkable how Red 76 was able to sensitively determine that from talking with the students and align those students with certain sort of tasks that would contribute to the overall project. And this project was wildly popular with the students at Columbus College of Art and Design, as well as other members of the community who participated in it, that really sort of thinking about the aggravation of the public space, as well as this combination of skills and so forth that came into the work. They actually then wanted to keep the schoolhouse, and the project wasn't necessarily from the beginning about that. It was about not sort of putting emphasis on that object. And we ended up dismantling it and recycling the materials back into the stream. This is a photograph of the interior of the workshop at the college, and this in the foreground is Rika Luther. She is one of 2 members of Learning Site. The other is Cecilia Wen. Rika and Cecilia were in Columbus for 6 weeks in residence, and they too wanted to build inside in a parking lot. And what we did was they proposed making something called audible dwelling. And audible dwelling was essentially 2 large speakers that you could walk into, and part of the speakers were designed in such a way as to reflect how speakers are actually designed. And I didn't know anything about this in terms of different boards that are put together at different angles that then will affect how the amount of air that comes in to the speaker box and how much is pushed out and affects the sound. And so Learning Site, this audible dwelling operates on a number of levels. First of all, they put together a speech with a local artist that was projected about once a week from these dwellings. And it was a speech that a performance artist spoke to the city space of Columbus, largely talking to the people of Columbus about the number of parking lots, alternative transportation, the number of malls, and so forth. But in addition to this, local artists were asked to participate in this work. However, they would see fit, and they made proposals. And we had one group, John Bennett and landscape architect and artist Sarah Coles, proposed to utilize the audible dwellings to make a work called the Court of Columbus. And the Court of Columbus was a dispersion of recordings that were taken from like bridges and air conditioners and other kinds of large infrastructure in downtown Columbus that was vibrating, and the recordings were taken up close to it and then really amplified through the speakers. So these are the sounds that make up city space that we overlook or we hear but don't understand. And so they use those to do that, as well as use an oscilloscope to project the sounds against the side of the audible dwellings. And so, like this work, I think I'm really proud of this work because it engendered a lot of interest even in the building of it, because we're sort of making the entire parking lot into this open studio over the course of 6 weeks by putting together these large dwellings. And at the opening, there was a lot of number of people that had not engaged at all with the college, except to drive past it or to stand by the bus stop where these were that came to the opening. And then how do you create a framework also then in the actual structures that invite local artists to participate in such a way as Sarah and John did here. And then even like this photo doesn't document it, but this was a crazy Friday, winter, February night, almost a year ago, like February 23rd or something. And we had like, not a lot, but like probably 35 or 40 people show up. And it was largely because of the presence that these had and because of the communications with Facebook and so forth that people had started to respond to the work and things. This project, okay, so Descent Revolution was a project that took place in the fall of 2009. This project called Dewey Decimal Days took place in 2008. It's a project that came out of largely my interest in printed matter and love of libraries, my interest in books, sort of this critique I have about the information we gather online and how inefficient or not always of that high quality. And so this is another quality that represents corporate culture. We connected with the Columbus Public Library and another regional library called Grandview Library that's outside of Columbus. And we made this series of, week-long series of 5 events that took place at various locations throughout Columbus. But one of the works that I was really pretty excited about was this work called Reference Collection. Reference Collection is essentially, it was the production of 41 bookmarks. And what we did was we rounded up artists from Columbus, but also artists that I know in New York and San Francisco, and people that were living in Europe, and I asked them to go to their local library and draw a portrait of the librarian. And so we ended up having 41 artists and 41 librarians participate in this project, where the artists, and not all of them followed the guidelines, because I think a lot of the artists contacted their friends that were librarians and so forth, which was fine. But the point of it was to sort of think of how librarians' time is used, and it's often used exactly like that in terms of I need you for something. But how about engaging with them over an hour while you draw their portrait, and you are contacting them? Yes, you're asking for their portrait, but you're not necessarily asking them to provide you a reference or knowledge and so forth. And you can talk about your backgrounds and where you come from as a librarian, where you artists come from as an artist on this kind of level playing ground. And so we ended up having 41 artists that participated, and we printed 20,000 of these bookmarks, and we dispersed them during the fall of Columbus. I don't have a picture of it, but we made these little sort of large sandwich signs, and they were in almost all several downtown libraries, as well as a number of coffee shops in Columbus. And then so on the back of all the bookmarks, you have the portraits of the librarians, as well as then just little details about their name, of course, the library, their librarian sense, you know, what's their favorite book, favorite library, favorite place to read, what are they reading, and then of course the artist's names. And so I think again this sort of thinks about how to emphasize those private moments that happen in the creation of a work of art, as well as think about how that work is dispersed in the public space. It doesn't necessarily have to be toward just social engagement, but that relationship that the object has. But even thinking too about like, and I'm very keen and aware of this, of ways in which we market ourselves and the ways in which we communicate about our organization and about what we do and value. So we had 20,000 of these dispersed in the public space of Columbus that of course had Bureau of Folk and Culture on it as the genesis of this project. You know, and so that was part of a large part of reference collection. And the reference collection was part of the Dewey Decimal Days project. Now, this is the project called I Am Searching for Field Character that we're doing in North Adams. And I Am Searching for Field Character is I was invited by Mass MoCA to participate in an exhibition that Susan Cross, curator there, is organizing. It's called The Workers. And her exhibition is looking at different representations, contemporary representations of labor. And I just moved to North Adams last February, and the city, as many of you have probably been there, it's just a really amazing experience in terms of understanding what it is and the history of it as this really vibrant center of manufacturing, and then the transition that it's gone through with Mass MoCA, and particularly in artists occupying those same spaces of manufacturing, and this sort of exchange of immaterial labor in the space of material labor. And so I had already been thinking along these terms for a project that we're doing in Bureau of Folk and Culture is making for open engagement on labor. And I Am Searching for Field Character then this is actually a view out of my window during the different seasons in North Adams, and how beautiful it is, even in like with the concrete river that's been channelized in the early 50s through there, and sort of it's really been inspirational in terms of creativity and just thinking about how we make work. Oh yeah, and of course we play croquet in North Adams. We see all these buildings manufacturing that loom over our activities. And so Bureau of Folk and Culture will inhabit this space in the back of Mass MoCA. The door to it is right there, the red door that you see, and here is what it currently looks like inside. But beginning May 28th, Bureau of Folk and Culture will use this space over the course of 4 months to produce programming related to labor, related to what we think of as cultural production. And the space will operate as where I will work each day, as well as other people who we work with. And the space will operate as an exhibition site, as a performance space, as a space of community. One of the projects we're doing is called Worksite, and because there are so many people that are spotted in these, that work as freelancers, designers and so forth, that work in North Adams and other spaces, and they work alone, although they're completely connected, like us, all of us, but they actually work alone. Worksite is inviting those individuals to come down and work in our space during the whole summer. And then so it's thinking about how that community is created through working together, even though you're working with different companies and on different projects. But it's rethinking of that the sense of what it means to be a colleague and so forth, and actually the common that would exist if we all live in North Adams, where it's environment. Another project which we're doing associated with this is called Bureau of Folk and Culture Beer Garden. And having lived in North Adams and going through last summer, North Adams really needs a beer garden, I think. For one, it just needs a place to gather outside on a really nice summer night and have a beer, and there's a lot of value in that, I think. So I had this idea that we would have the beer garden, and it'll be just outside of this red door here. But then the beer garden is also then going to operate by that space to have a beer, but as a way, as a means to pay for the programming. We are going to re-channel the funds garnered from it to the artists that are participating in the project. So it's this sort of exchange too of like capital through these different service industries. And then Red 76 is doing this project called Bartleby's Pen. And every other Friday, we have visiting artists and scholars, academics, writers that are going to come through. And the beer garden will open at 5. Bartleby's Pen will start, later in the evening, and we will pull up like a screen along this side here on the left of the river. And around 9, gather those patrons that want to join us, and the visiting artists will give a lecture. And those visiting artists also will help with the chores related to the beer garden. So it's also this leveling of service industries and thinking about how culture is produced. And also, I think, facing the fact that art and, beer gardens, restaurants, organic farms, syrup producing industries, like it all actually defines the culture of a region together. And so I am searching for field characters going to sort of work through those ideas and sort of help draw them to the surface, I think, hopefully. And here's just some really wonderful pictures from last year at the Solid Sound Festival that Wilco produced in August at MassMoCA. And we're fortunate enough to be able to operate during that weekend. So I think, while we won't hold the beer garden that weekend because there's so much activity going on, I do think like Printed Matter is going to operate for a weekend out of Bureau of Culture and have available artist books for sale. And again, for this I thought, well, how do we participate? How do we define the things we value during this weekend, which are artists and these publication outlets, but also you have to give someone something to buy during this weekend. So how do you also generate this income for artists as well as the programming during these kinds of activities that you can't really ignore and you have to think through. So that's, and here's our vision of the beer garden. Let me see, where am I? I wanted to talk about one more project, and I think maybe have some questions. This is a project which is not it's comparable in some ways with the interest in labor that we're doing for I Am Searching for Field Character, but I was working on this project before I Am Searching for Field Character came about, and this is called On Symptoms of Cultural Industry, and Open Engagement, which is operated out of Portland State University, holds a conference annually in May, and they invited Bureau of Folk and Culture to participate. And rather than present as a speaker, I proposed that we make a work for the conference. So again, coming out of just all the inspiration that's been happening with living in North Adams, that we're making a work related to the industry of the Sprague Electric, the industry that inhabited what is today the buildings that are MassMoCA. Here's a photograph from the interior of those buildings when it was Sprague Electric. And then on the left is a photograph of the Sprague Research Center that we've learned was actually a vital aspect of what was Sprague Electric. And this is a photograph by Timothy Nazaro, an artist that's here, and who also lives in North Adams, who I'm collaborating with on this project. So here's another photograph by Tim. This is Mike Hutchinson. He worked for Sprague for a number of years as an engineer, and we were fortunate enough to do some research interviews with him to learn about his personal experiences working at Sprague, as well as like how the city has transformed since Sprague and since the MassMoCA has taken it over. There's another woman. Her name is Ruth Bernardi. She worked as on the line at Sprague, putting together all these very small electrical conductors that the industry made. And we also have had the fortunate experience of spending time with her, talking about Sprague, as well as taking photographs of in and around her place and so forth. And these are a series also of photographs by Tim, and that really capture North Adams, the industry, the channelized river, you know, this space of possibility, but also the space of being scarred in some ways, of an industry, of a city that really puts so much emphasis and, you know, almost all of their eggs in one basket with Sprague. Oh yeah, I want to talk about this really quick. This is the exhibition called Seventh Dream of Teenage Heaven, and just I put this in here because I want to give you a sense that Bureau of Culture makes the majority of the work inside galleries, and this is an exhibition that I organized for Columbus College of Art Design, just closed, and it's going to Bennington College and opens April 5th there. The Seventh Dream of Teenage Heaven was included work by 17 artists, and the exhibition is essentially about how our relationship with time that was once marked by material culture, that was once marked by the audio cassettes and vinyl and so forth, has changed with the advent of technologies, and also, of course, with going through postmodernism. So today, we don't necessarily relate to a moment because of an object that we look at, because or a song that we hear, because of how everything is, the internet, and particularly Facebook, is leveling our access to culture, and even leveling what we call culture, uniting both the high and the low. And this exhibition looks at that. It also looks at like the modernism's like fantastic ideas about what the future might hold, particularly related to like thinkers of science fiction, and thinking about how, you know, that those kinds of thoughts don't really necessarily permeate our space today. We always think about what the end result is possible before rather just thinking really big about what can be done. And this is somewhat of generalization, but this is I feel toward the moment today. And so this exhibition, you know, has work by British artist Mark Leckey, Lottie Rist, artist from Dublin, Gerard Byrne. These are photographs by Gerard Byrne taken in 2005, but also meant to be thought of that they were from the 1960s. And again, thinking about how things don't necessarily haven't changed so much in some ways. This is another installation shot. But to save time, one of the things I want to talk about is Bureau of Folk and Culture also produced a work, and the work is I collected a bunch of books, editions of paperbacks from 1984, and the title of the work is He Loved Big Brother, which is the last sentence in 1984, and it's sort of this curatorial intervention or gesture in a way to help sort of. This comes at the end of the exhibition as well, to maybe help viewers summarize what is the exhibition, and also even a provocation about what is Bureau of Folk and Culture, and the number of different levels that it can operate on. And there's a photograph of the books. And then the catalog too, the publications are really important for what we do. We disperse them widely, and they, on one hand, document exhibitions, but they also really provide critical writing about the exhibitions with long essays that situate why we gathered work by 17 artists together. And this catalog, I wrote a play, and where the stars of the play are people like Jean Baudrillard, Clement Greenberg, Jürgen Habermas, contemporary curators like Matthew Higgs, and then other theorists like Frederick Jameson. And they help me, the narrator, explain to the reader what is this exhibition about and how is it situated within a history of modernism, postmodernism, and what today is being widely called the era of superhybridity. And in a way, this too, the catalog in a way is meant to even enact like this postmodern aspect of drawing all these things from different parts of culture and leveling it. And then also it's related to the theater that like people like Michael Fried and others, you know, said was the downfall of modern art and actually initiated modern minimalism. And then the last thing too is I pulled lyrics from 1984 and commissioned. Like I really love space. I really like to like create this, like where I live. I really like surrounded by not objects but like have that space, you know. Like I'm really excited to get into that mocha, into that space and transform it into something I think is going to be really special. So I don't know, maybe even operating out of someone's home or someone's warehouse space or room could help, you know, define that as well. Yeah, that's not easy. It's almost like some of the ridiculous one I have in New York City or something. Yeah. I have some books I just thought I'd pass around so you can look at them while we're talking. Also, these are the publications that we make. Yeah.
What are you going to do next?
We have Portland, which we're making an installation of storefront there that'll include photography, photography, video, and performance. And then I introduced the field character. And then I have another project with Mocha invited me to participate in a project on cities related to urban space that's going to happen in 2012. So we're gonna work on that. And I'm also working on a dissertation that needs to be finished. So
when you enter, when you go into a new place, I mean, it sounds like you're thinking of mostly as places, and then you think of like the artists that you want to invite, and then it just kind of evolves from there.
I think so. I think that the thing that I try to do is like how do you invite artists from outside to connect with local artists, because there are so many talented people that we come across. And I think that's really important to me. It's like, you know, building friendships through I guess this space of the art world that we operate in, and then you know, and seeing what possibilities come. That's why I think like, you know, it's hard for me to say I or me, because I think we all are influenced by the people that we know, and so ideas generate out of like over a beer, you know. Ideas generate from here, being here, and so I think yeah. So who knows what other projects would come up, or you know, who knows like what possibilities might be held for this space at Mass Mocha, and like having this kind of parasite of beautiful culture in a way, and inhabiting this institution, and you know, too, thinking like this space is inhabitable during the winter, but maybe beautiful culture could connect in some ways with the institution by inviting artists to come in and make something unique in relation to it, you know, not necessarily they're needing that space in that way. And all of this, I think, is sort of operating in a way to like dismantle the way we engage with contemporary art, and sort of allow those points of entry for individuals that might sort of know who Michel Foucault is and Leotard, but also trying to create those spaces for individuals who do not. So you have these multiple points of entry that allow that experience of what I see as always quality work and engaging work to be accessible by a number of different people. And I don't know, I mean, you see this sometimes as rhetoric, but I've seen this, it happen too. Like, even like visiting artists have like gone on to teach in Salzburg and Vienna. Now students at CCD are over. A student is over at Salzburg in the summer. Now a student might be in Vienna or something, you know. So it's those kinds of connections that we don't see happening that are because you brought this artist to the city type of thing as well. So I think it's, yeah.
I have a question. You referenced mostly the art world and the curatorial world. So I wanted to ask you some questions about your interaction with other kinds of publics, with the general media, and what you feel has been left for the communities in some of the projects that have been connected.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's why I like art worlds, because like like I mentioned, like a lot of the, like for instance, I work with a landscape art. I work with an artist Sarah Coles, who is also a landscape architect, but she's trained within the discipline of landscape architecture. But how do you invite someone who wants to maybe expand the boundaries of that discipline and into the realm of contemporary art? So I mean, I think it's because of an attraction to thinking about space that I'm attracted to working with her and expanding the notion of landscape architecture alongside with her. So I think that.
So I'm just like, for instance, the library project, the Voorhies project. What kind of reaction did you get from the library, the librarians, the public?
Dewey Decimal Days is like loved. Like everywhere. That seems to be all the projects I've done in Columbus. That you go somewhere and people remember the Dewey Decimal Days project and talk about the bookmarks that they made and the people that they met. And yeah, the Dewey Decimal Days could be recreated in some way without, or I guess it could in another city or whatever. But it was a very special project for that because I think also librarians, like I don't, even invite them into the realm of contemporary art and sort of engage them with artists. And I don't know if any of you interact with librarians, but they're a force to be reckoned with when they like gather together. Like they were able to provide such big audiences for these projects. Not all of them. Some of them we had some pretty small, but like and helping communicate about it. It was really amazing just in terms of that enthusiasm during the project. And I thought that was interesting too, creating it then within an exhibition. So I like those moments. And they're unexpected because you don't always know what you're doing. Which I think is a good thing.
You talked a little bit before about long-term vision of people looking 100 years, ahead. And I'm wondering for you, if you can think 30 years ahead of what you would like to have happened from all of this, or what you want.
Well, I mean, I think, I don't, also it should be known that these ideas are a lot of these ideas, like I mentioned Shethala at the beginning, which is located in Zurich. There's another institution called Office of Contemporary Art in Norway, located in Oslo. And these are institutions that I model a lot of the work that we do off of. Is that how do you have a space that operates on a number of different levels for different people? So like the space this summer will be like a studio, a video. People can view videos. They can learn about like the projects and they can hang out and work themselves. And I don't know, I mean it's sort of naive in a way, but I don't know if it will happen because capital is too strong. But to sort of continue to reduce that kind of hierarchy that we have established with institutions, not education institutions and art institutions, and engage differently with that. And those institutions like Shethala and Office of Contemporary Art Norway are those progressively thinking institutions that I think are leading that kind of movement, I guess. It's not a movement, but that kind of characteristics, Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. If there's any other questions, I'll be here, or we can look at the books or whatever.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah.